So here's a great example of enculturation indoctrination. The young learn from their elders. And I think this is a Sura tribe. The picture's on the right with the lip plates. And then I just grabbed a couple of American mother-daughter type clips. And what's so interesting to me about this is often people will have the same intention, but how they arrive at their goal could be radically different because of their culture. So in both cases, perhaps these young girls really love their father, they love their family, they care about them, and part of how they present themselves and comport themselves is to show honor and deference for their father. In the case of the Sura women on the right, um, here we have an adult woman with a clay lip plate, and depending on the size of the lip plate, you get different offers from suitors of amount of cattle. So a very small plate might only get you 5 cows, but that woman's lip plate could bring in possibly 70 cattle, which is basically would be her father's retirement for the rest of his life. We don't quite do a bride wealth system here in the United States. The closest we had in the West was probably like a dowry. Um, but I love how you see they don't let the young girls stretch their lips until they reach a certain age, but even the young girls in anticipation of that day are already practicing with twigs. Just like this young girl who's probably isn't allowed to wear makeup out in public and stuff, depending on her parents and her age, she still likes to pretend and prepare for when she will be an adult woman herself. In addition to culture telling us what's normal, it also assigns us roles. So all of us have different roles within our societies, and these roles are going to be affected by things like gender. Um, Males and females usually have different culture, different roles in the culture. Um, there's very few egalitarian cultures in the world. And even though our culture kind of posits that as like a value, at least the progressive ends of the culture, um, we are certainly much more egalitarian in the United States than we were 50 years ago, but we still have gender distinctions and stereotypes. I still have stereotypes just because when I was growing up, female doctors were a rarity, at least in my world. And so even to this day, when someone says they're going to see a doctor, I instinctively tend to think it's a man. And I've had to like train myself, like, that doesn't mean it's a man, Fred. Same with a nurse. Those were traditionally female, but now we have many fine male nurses as well. So a lot of our gender assigned roles changed, especially after World War II. Roles can also be assigned by age. We have different expectations of children than we have of adults and of the elderly. And so as we move through different stages of human development, our culture will assign us different tasks or expectations for when you're a child, when you're a grown up, a householder, and then when you retire. Skill sets also could affect your role. Perhaps you're really good at directions or tracking or helping with childbirth. Your skill sets could end up giving you a assigned role by that society. You may have a lot of physical strength, or you might be incredibly intellectually sound, and you may be assigned different roles based on your attributes. Other role culture can also impose on us roles through caste. We saw this most specifically in India, but a lot of places have a type of caste system. Caste systems, to differentiate them from class systems, is you're normally born into a caste system and it's rigid. At least in India, the only way to move into, there were only a couple different ways to move from one caste to another, and it usually came through death. And then if you had achieved enough merit, you could reincarnate into a higher caste when you came back the next time around. Another way you could get into a higher caste is women's dharma was tied with that of their spouse, their husband. And so it's rare, but say a Brahmin son married an untouchable daughter. Well, I don't know if you could go that far. Let's say a merchant daughter. Um, she would get that status with that man. But even more romantic, say a Brahmin daughter married a merchant man, she would come down and travel with him through his. So definitely some patriarchy there and attaching the female with the male's role. In a caste system, it's more fluid in that it comes through, it could be personal achievement, it could be inherited wealth, and you could move from different classes from poor, middle class, upper class throughout your lifetime. You don't have to wait to die to come back into a different class necessarily. And then the last one I had on that list was roles are often assigned by need, and sometimes they'll even violate tradition or stereotypes. Um, a good example from the Bible would have been when Israel, in the time of the judges, they could not find someone to lead the people to war, which traditionally would have been a male warlord or soldier. And Deborah rose to the occasion because of the need. And so she was able to enter in what would have been traditionally a male role. All right. Questions, comments about roles? Roles are, it's a double-edged sword, right? Because they're helpful. They show us our place, our rights, duties, expectations, privileges. All roles come like that, right? Think of all the different roles you have in your lives. Like, I'm a son, I'm a brother, I'm an uncle, I'm a grandpa, I'm a teacher, I'm I'm a naturalist. I do all these certain things. These are roles I have in my life. And each of those different roles comes with different rights, duties, and obligations, but corresponding privileges. Does that make sense? Okay.